Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our webinar on approaching the new New South Wales Stage 4 and 5 mathematics syllabus. My name is Kim Keane and I'm the National Webinar Manager for Cambridge University Press. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, Cambridge University Press and Assessment acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Please know this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed by email to all of those registered over the next few days. You'll also receive a link where you have the opportunity to give feedback on your experience. You can ask any questions in the Q&A box during the webinar, or you can ask any questions during the live Q&A session with Stuart at the end of the webinar. It's important to note that this evening's webinar has a large number of attendees and there will be limited time for our Q&A, so please feel comfortable to add any questions as they come to hand, and we will endeavour to answer those as much as we can prior to the Q&A session commencing. If we don't get to all the questions, we will respond via email directly to you. Let me begin by introducing our speaker this evening, Stuart Palmer. Stuart's a high school mathematics teacher with more than 25 years experience. He's been head of mathematics in 2 schools and is very well known by teachers throughout the state for his professional learning workshops. Stuart assists thousands of Year 12 students every year as they prepare for their HSC examinations. And in addition, he's spent more than a decade running tutorials for pre-service mathematics teachers at the University of Sydney. So without further ado, please welcome Stuart Palmer.
Hello. I'm just going to share my screen and we will get straight into it. It's great to, well, that list. Last time I saw it was 560 names. Wow. My mum will be so proud when I tell her. Thanks for joining me. An exciting time. Who would have thought that it's 10 years since I signed up with Cambridge and the previous syllabus, the current syllabus was released, and that began a journey. This was the advertisement of the session today. Little change, that last one, the new features, we're going to do that next year. There's plenty to talk about with the other things, but we just want to leave that for a little while. Right, yes, the story so far, I think Kim mentioned most of that. I was really surprised when I went to the Mansfield conference up at Tweed Heads. More than half the people there had never been to a Mansfield conference before. Lots and lots of youngsters beginning their career. So look, I'm not going to assume that anybody knows me or knows what I do. I know there are some really long-term friends on the list. So thanks for continuing to support my endeavours, but welcome to people who've never actually been to anything that I've run before. There's bound to be some of my Macquarie Uni graduate, Sydney Uni graduates here. Good to see you. And lots of people using Cambridge. Yeah. Recently, I'm going to spell this one out because it does have bearing on today. There's a new school in Sydney called Inner Sydney High School. And thanks to Norden, who is here, I believe, now in Tasmania, all the way from Tasmania, Norden, he put my name forward to work with this brand new school in Sydney, right near Central Station, called Inner Sydney High School. I'm mentioning that now and later because it does have bearing on today's topic, believe it or not. Yes, and thank you very much, COVID. Things got pretty dismal here, so I have re-engaged with being a casual teacher, which I haven't done for a very long time. Right, lots of people from all over New South Wales. This is what I used to do before COVID a lot, was travel a lot all over New South Wales, running PD sessions in all sorts of places. Let me know if you think I've missed one. And I have been conducting a very important research project for the best crumbed lamb cutlets in New South Wales. And prior to COVID, the joint winners were the Victoria Hotel in Wagga Wagga and the Narrandera Exes Club. I'm sure it was called the Ex-Servicemen's Club when I was there, but maybe they discovered there are actually some ex-service women in Narrandera as well. All right, so here we go, a brief and informative history, really for the youngsters or those who are new to teaching, because as you can see, I've been around for a long time. Back in '96, we got that little syllabus document, which some of you may recall. There were 3 of those little booklets, and they were called Advanced, Intermediate, and Standard. And every one of those syllabus documents had core topics and, wait for it, option topics. And guess what? One of the option topics was called network. So everything old is new again. From my memory, not many people taught that option and not many students did it because there was no follow through into year 11 and 12. So I think it was deemed as a bit of a wasted time. Anyway, everything old is new again. We're going back to networks. Look, that system had its advantages, but it had some serious disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage, in my opinion, that was the massive gap between advanced and intermediate. And many of my students, advanced was too much, too fast. Intermediate, the problem with intermediate was that this arrow here going from intermediate to 2 unit, well, that was really false advertising as far as I was concerned, as were these arrows pointing upwards. Once we got into year 9, it was very rare for a student to move up to a higher level. There was a lot of movement down between the beginning of year 9 and the end of year 10. The problem with this system for a lot of children was they were just put into a box, and that is where they stayed. And it was by the time they got to halfway through year 10, choosing subjects for year 11, I want to be a pilot, I need to do advanced, well, I need to do 2 unit. Well, sorry, it's a bit late now. You should have told us that at the start of year 9. They were very much boxed in, locked in. And in many cases, I think and I feel bad about this because I was part of this system and played nicely in this system. But in retrospect, I feel bad about not having a bigger conversation with parents and students before students were put into one of those boxes at the end of year 8. And then we got a new thing in 2002. This was the first time we had seen working mathematically and continuum of learning. And we saw these new things called 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. And right from the get-go, they were not meant to be boxes. Teachers and schools were given flexibility to do what was best for the students. And that may have meant in some cases doing 5.1 and 5.2, and then for your students who were heading towards 2 unit maths in year 11, now called advanced maths, there was scope to do topics which would set them up and get them ready. Without being critical of my fraternity of maths teachers, I think we were all, and I'm guilty of it as anybody else, we're all a bit guilty of not embracing the freedom that was offered to us by this idea. Unfortunate, I think, in retrospect, that they decided to have 3 endpoints. on the continuum. I think it would have been a lot better if they only had 2, because it just, for a lot of people, it felt as though we just rolled from the old 3 courses into these new 3 endpoints. Again, false advertising in a NSW document showing that it was possible to do nothing from 5.3 and progress from 5.2 into the 2-unit mathematics advanced subject. To me, that was false advertising, and it hardly ever worked for the students under my charge. They needed something from 5.3. They didn't need all of 5.3. The scope was there to do just enough, just the right things, but opportunity lost, I think, in many cases. And there was also scope if you wanted to do some, say, circle geometry or logarithms. You didn't have to do everything on that page. You could just pick and choose bits from the logarithms page. But again, I didn't see much evidence of that happening. Right, and then 2012, the beast, 497 pages of syllabus for kindergarten to year 10. It was the first time we'd had it all rolled into one document. It was the first time, as far as I know, that they ever reviewed the mathematics syllabuses from K to 10 all in one go to try and improve the continuity, especially in that important leap from year 6 into secondary school. Yes, it was the New South Wales syllabus for the Australian curriculum. But yeah, that's when I started working for Cambridge. And you've probably seen the our year 10 5.1, 2 and 3 BREC. That book has 100 extra pages that were not there for the other states doing the Australian curriculum version. So there was certainly a lot of New South Wales elaboration. Right, again, maybe not so false advertising. The arrow from 5.2 into mathematics 2 unit was a skinny arrow, whatever that means. But even so, in my opinion, 5.1 was not good preparation for general on its own. 5.1 on its own, you needed a bit of 5.2 as well to be well prepared. And likewise, 5.2 alone was certainly not good preparation for the 2-unit course. And that whole notion of 5.1, 2 and 3 was not embraced by the rest of Australia in any way, shape or form. That's very much a New South Wales thing. And then along came, much more recently, along came the New South Wales Curriculum Review, led by Jeff Masters. And these were some of the things we saw. Sounded good. More time for teaching. Strengthening post-school pathways, and a new curriculum from 2024. Yeah, it was supposed to be an 8-year process of implementation. I think that's what it said, but the New South Wales government shortened that by 50%, as I recall. So K to 2 maths is published, final. They've got they had this year to get ready, and K to 2 starts next year. And we're going to have 2023 to get ready for a 2024 implementation. we got a first draft. There was a consultation phase. Unusually, we got a second draft with another consultation phase. Never seen that before. And now we are waiting for the final version, and the verdict is soon. Right. I think that's going to happen either in the first week of December or possibly the second week of December. I'm not a betting man, but if I were a betting man, I think I would be going for one of those. We will let you know as soon as that happens. I'm going to do a very detailed comparison of the 2012 with the 2023. I'll be doing that for two reasons. One, because I work on the textbook, but two, because I help teachers and schools implement a new syllabus document, whether they're using my textbook or not. So stay tuned for that. If all goes to plan, what I think I would like to do in the holidays is to do that detailed comparison, make a video of it, share it with everybody before school goes back, and maybe in your in the early weeks of next year, possibly even on your staff development days, maybe you can show the video to your maths team, and we might have another Zoom session to talk about what I have discovered. I have done some comparison. We're going to see that today, but I wouldn't call it as thorough as it is going to be by the end of the school holidays. These are the two places I go when I'm looking for information about the new syllabus. I got very excited on Sunday morning because somebody told me that the implementation is definitely going to be this, 7 and 9 in 2024, followed by 7, 8, 9 and 10 in 2025. And then, much to my surprise, this text vanished from the NSW website. Very strange indeed. But I think I made a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, text messages. I think this is what's going to happen. Where did it say December 2022? Somebody has asked a question. Maybe it's a typo. Can somebody speak to me?
I think we're talking, that's a question from Kingsley Hunt.
Yep.
The question is December 2022 or December 23. I think, Kingsley, if you're referring to Stuart talking about this coming December, what he was talking about was when we don't know for sure, Stuart doesn't know, as he said, when the final version of the New South Wales syllabus will be published.
Yeah.
But that's when we might be expecting. We know from NSW that the wording is that it's coming very soon. So we think probably in this December, that's when that will be released. So that's this December 2022.
They do, traditionally, NSW does like to give us, to their credit, they do like to give everybody a full year to get ready for implementation.
And Kingsley has followed up to say that he was just being a smart aleck, given our uncertainty in general about news about the New South Wales syllabus. So I will leave you, Stuart, to crack on. But in general, as we hear updates and as it relates to our plans, we will let you know via the next one of these that we do, as Stuart was saying.
Absolutely. All right. So in the second draft of the syllabus, I don't know about you, but this diagram reminds me very much of Central Station. And maybe they could claim that the advertising is a little bit more honest this time, that students tend to move down rather than up. Anyhow, that's the latest in the diagrams. And some of you have heard me talk about the 26 lanes of pleasure and pain. I've said that an awful lot in the last 10 years, the 26 lanes of pleasure and pain. There is a genuine attempt to have fewer lanes and less detail. Some of the detail, well, I'll talk about that later, but they are trying to make it more streamlined. There's certainly a lot less pages in this new syllabus. But all our old friends are still there somewhere. Good old logarithms and circle geometry and so on and so on. Yep, so there's the core. Stage 4 core and stage 5 core. We don't have to wait for year 9 to begin stage 5 core. I read that somewhere or heard it somewhere. We don't need to hold kids back if they are ready for stage 5 core in year 7 or year 8. You go, girl. And the diagram shows that it's, necessary to do the core before the options. Oops, not options. That's what they were called in the first draft. They're now called paths. But nothing really says that. In fact, there are some things in those beautiful bright blue topics that can be done before the core is complete. Absolutely. Working mathematically took a bit of a battering in the first draft, but they have listened, I think, to what some people said, and they have actually made a few changes to the definitions of what working mathematically is all about. So typically, this is what it tends to look like in a topic like trigonometry. It begins in stage 4 with a little bit of Pythagoras' theorem, same as before. And then, rather than describing trigonometry in 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3, it is described this way, that there's an A topic and a B topic in the core. One of those could be year 9, followed by the other one in year 10, perhaps, or they could be both done in year 9, I would, and then have a consolidation in year 10 before launching into the path, which was called the option in the first draft, where things get more complicated. The S and the A here indicate that this particular path topic is suitable for students heading towards standard and advanced, whereas this one is really there for students heading towards advanced, including those who will also do extension 1. So there is a huge amount of freedom to decide how far you are wanting to take your various students along the trigonometry core and path. In some ways, I'm finding this much easier to interpret. Working on the textbook, one of the things that I found really difficult was that in some topics, and trigonometry was one of them, the step up from 5.1 to 5.2 was very minimal, baby steps really, but then the step from 5.2 to 5.3 was a giant leap for mankind. To me, this is, as a textbook writer and a teacher and somebody delivering PD, this is going to be much easier to program and deliver, I think. without those strange 5.12 stop signs. Right. Likewise for area. And this was a strange one because, you know, trigonometry, 5.3 trigonometry was much harder than 5.1 trigonometry. But 5.3 surface area, well, you know, what's so hard? If you've done area equals pi r squared in year 7 or 8, what is so difficult about surface area of a sphere being 4 pi r squared in year 9 or 10? Only a very small step. But anyway, there's lots to get through. Nessa says this. I can let you read. Okay, the bottom is me. To me, it seems as though stage 5.1 alone is not really a thing anymore. The stage 5 core is a step up from 5.1, but I think that's totally okay. It used to concern me greatly that students were being placed into a 5.1 class. They were doing less than the Australian curriculum, significantly less than the Australian curriculum, and students were being placed in that class. Students themselves were given no choice, and parents were generally not consulted. That used to bother me somewhat. Rebecca, hi Rebecca from Loreto Kirribilli, how are you? Rebecca wants to know, do you think the course performance descriptors for stage 5 will be rewritten? That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to write that one down because that's worth asking Nessa. I was never a fan of the A10, A9, B8, B7. I'm not sure what's going to happen to that. The problem with that all along has been, and the problem will persist, if you're doing core with no of the paths or only a small number of the paths, what does that do for your grade at the end of year 10? This has been an ongoing debate on the Manswa Facebook group. Is it possible to do 5.1 and get something higher than a C or not? And the jury is out. Anyhow. And the second dot point there, stage 5 core alone, I think students need to know that from day 1 of year 9. Your options are limited. If you're in a class and you are only going to be doing the core, you've already missed out on advanced from day 1 of year 9. I think students and parents need to know that, if that is what's going to happen to students in your school. Right, I like to be provocative. Those of you who know me well know that I like to be to stir the pot. Right, so my good friend Norden, who's now in Tasmania, Norden and I had lots of good conversations about this. Sometimes they went for 2 hours. We think that term 2 or term 3 of year 10 is way too late to be talking to students and parents, parents about mathematics subjects in year 11. That conversation should really begin in year 8. When students, a good time to do that would be when students are choosing their year 9 elective subjects. I work for the STEM Academy at the University of Sydney, and so I am involved in the whole STEM movement. Really interesting project. You know, working backwards through Sydney Uni, if you want a lucrative STEM career, well, you probably need a relevant degree. And if you're going to get that degree from Sydney Uni, you need to do Year 11 Advanced and get a band 4, 5 or 6. Other unis will let you in, but the jury is in. Many of those students fail miserably in their first year if they have not done Year 11 Advanced. Extension 1 would be nice as well. I think students and their parents need to know this before they start Year 9. And luckily, after having all these conversations with Norton, I had the opportunity to put this into practice. So Inner Sydney High School, it's a brand new school right near Central Station. There's an old building, they fixed them up, and then they built basically a 13-story office block right behind it. And they employed me on a kind of consultancy basis. I was actually going there once a week, and I was helping a lot with the transition from the first Year 8 into the first Year 9. So Year 9 this year, that's the first Year 9. And now they're getting ready for Year 10 next year. And also the second cohort ever in the school, preparing to be the second Year 9 in 2023. So we had a lot of conversations about this, and I had an opportunity to put into practice what I had been preaching and what Norton and I had been speaking about, and we came up with 3 original pathways through Stage 5. And we called them, after much toing and froing, we called them Express and AAA and Numerate Citizens. Let me start with Numerate Citizens. There are some students in the school who clearly have problems with the learning of mathematics, and we had conversations with their parents, and we have designed a program for them that will suit their needs. We called it Numerate Citizens. So parents were consulted. In the end, we decided that parents would really need to sign off on that decision, because it would be cutting them off from the beginning of Year 9. There was no intention that they would be doing advanced in Year 11 and 12. But the parents knew about it. I spent an interesting day phoning some parents who did not return the letter and having conversations with them. Access all areas, AAA was the default. We decided, for better or worse, that everybody should start, a large number of students should start Year 9 on the assumption that they will be doing advanced in Year 11 and 12. And if that doesn't work out, they would be very well prepared for standard. So the students on the AAA pathway are doing 5.1, and the most useful bits of 5.2, perhaps even a little bit of 5.3, so that they are ready for day 1 of Year 11 Advanced. We had this conversation with the parents and the students. Express, yep, from day 1 of Year 9, you are heading towards Advanced plus Extension 1. So we're going to go fast. That's why it's called Express. We put all this onto a website, and a lot of this was happening while lockdown was still very much a thing and restrictions. We couldn't get the parents into the school to talk to them, so we did a Zoom, which was actually better, in my opinion. You can Google maths at INSID Maths Pathways. You will find a page that looks like this. It's all about maths, and I'm really proud of what we did. And I'm not there anymore because they now have an awesome head teacher whose name is Ash. I hope he's here today. And Ash is now driving the show. So I'll answer that question in a moment. Ash is driving the show, and I had a quick conversation with Ash the other day, and I was pleased to hear that they are following through with this very much for Year 9 this year, year 8 this year into year 9 next year. Right, there was a question about, is the numerate citizen pathway? We didn't seek any sort of accreditation for it from NSW. In our opinion, it covers enough of 5.1 that we can put our hand over our heart and say, yes, they have done 5.1. And it also includes useful sections of 5.2. So I think we didn't need to apply, but we wanted to give it a name. We didn't want to call it 5.1. In my opinion, there are some things in 5.2 and even 5.3 which are more useful and less difficult than some of the things in 5.1. So I believe we've done enough. That was Murray. Murray, do you want to follow that question up with another one? Please do so. And again, we can have conversations about these things later on. Right, so you can't show your maths faculty the final version of the syllabus yet, but I think you can start having some worthwhile conversations really soon. Especially, there's quite a number of head teachers here today in the meeting. This is the conversations that Norden and I have been having now for the last 4 or 5 years, I think. What is the ideal preparation for Extension 1? What is bare minimum? How do we make this happen? Can we start doing this in year 8? We don't have to wait till day 1 of year 9. In fact, when the previous syllabus came out, NSW published a scope and sequence in which half of year 8 for bright students, high achieving students, half of year 8 was spent doing year 9 things. Totally okay to do that with some of your students. And how are we going to talk to students and parents about this? Likewise for advanced. That is the tricky one. You want a STEM career, you need a STEM degree, ideally. That's going to be hard work for some of your students. What is the bare minimum that we can aim for to get through before the end of year 10 so they're ready for year 11 advanced, and how are we going to make that happen? I'm very passionate because of my work in STEM. I'm very passionate about making sure that students are ready for year 11 advanced. Some of the schools I work with through the STEM Academy, they talk about having the STEM elective, and I ask tricky questions about the students in the STEM elective. What maths class are they in and what maths are they doing? Are they doing anything from 5.3? If not, I think they should. Here's another conversation you can start real soon. If we have students doing the core at different rates and students doing different path topics, what do we do about assessment? Surely they can't all do the same year 10 half yearly, surely not. What do we do about reporting? How does a potential employer know that student A and student B, well, obviously they've gone to the same school, but how would an employer realise that they actually followed a different pathway through year 9 and 10? How is that going to be obvious to parents and employers? And finally, another one, if your school has been running a 5.1 only class, what are you going to do about that in year 9 2024? Because NSW seems to be indicating that they need to do all of the core. What are you going to do for those students? Scott. Right, question. Do you know if we would have to have common assessment? Well, that has never been a rule. By common, I think you mean all the students in year 9 doing the same kind of assessment. I don't think that's ever been a NSW requirement or a DOE requirement. So I think the answer to that has always been no. Nice question from Pieti. Capable students in year 7 and fast tracking but not accelerating them to give more time to build a deep understanding for stage 5 paths. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. I have, as a head teacher, operated an enrichment system through 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I was forced into running an accelerated program. I do prefer the former, not the latter. I'm not a massive fan of acceleration. An enrichment program for your best and brightest would certainly give them some time to start on stage 5 sooner rather than later, so that they find time before the end of year 10, they have time for some of the more challenging path topics like polynomials, circle geometry, functions, that kind of thing. When those topics are rushed at the end of year 10, I actually think they're a bit counterproductive. So yes.
I'll just add to what Stuart has said there. By the way, I am a maths publisher at Cambridge, looking after the maths program and working with Stuart on the next edition of our New South Wales books, as well as the previous ones. Just to add to what Stuart has said there, that does relate to conversations that we are having now about our next editions. As Stuart said at the start, we're not going to go into detail about specifically what we're doing for the next editions, because we need to wait for the final version of the syllabus before we cement those. But certainly we are having discussions about how can we include material in year 7 and 8 so that some of the topics that first come in stage 5 that go towards advance and extension don't just come out of nowhere, that there is a smooth entrance towards those, and some of those harder topics can be introduced to the stronger students earlier than in year 9 and 10.
Scott, am I allowed to talk about pre-tests?
Yeah, you can add. Yep, you can mention.
Okay,
those.
So as you would know, if you've used the Cambridge books, at the start of every chapter in every book, there is a pre-test. Along the journey, we've had some really interesting conversations with teachers in schools saying, well, that's not the kind of pre-test I want. I want a diagnostic tool so that if I've got a really bright bunch of kids in year 7, they can prove to me that they already know how to do add-ups and takeaways and multiplies and divides with fractions and decimals, so I won't bore them rigid by teaching that. And that is not, our pre-tests were, are you ready for the topic? We're going to provide 2 types of pre-tests, I think. One, the old style, and one where kids can prove to you that they've already mastered many of the concepts in the chapter, and therefore they could be enriched/accelerated somewhat, rather than being bored during year 7 and 8, waiting for something more challenging to come along.
That's right, yeah. And we will have a fairly comprehensive system for diagnostic assessment that will go alongside the next edition, but we will talk a bit more about that in upcoming sessions. Stuart, there are quite a few questions coming through now.
Yep.
Are we near the end of
I think this will be a really good time for questions about what I've said.
Yep.
I'm just want to hang on a second. I just want to see what the next slide is.
Yeah, we'll let you finish off, and then we can get to some of the other questions.
Well, I would like to. There's. Hang on a second. Just let me skip forward. Yeah, pretty soon. Yes, would be an ideal time. One more slide first.
Sure.
Yep. When it comes to kids joining you in year 7, just be aware that it looks to me as though the new syllabus for 3 to 6 is going to be published at the same time. And so therefore, it will be delivered to students in years 3 to 6 in 2024. That first year 7 would have done our first year 7. Sorry, I'm saying this badly. Our first year 7 2024 will have come out of the old K to 6 syllabus, not the new one. So that's something I'll be looking at for the books and also PD. There might be some things, some little gaps that students will have coming into year 7 in 2024. But anyway, from here on in, it's all about very specific things, but I think this is a great time for questions. What do we got, Scott?
All right, let's go from where we were up to. Here's a question. Hi, Stuart. Thoughts on picking up those capable and we've talked about that. A comment from Jane Morgan. These sound like questions common to all schools. Isn't this the sort of thing NSW should specify, not individual schools to work out? This was sent during when you were talking about inner city and the program there. What's your response to that? It's a good comment.
In my experience, NSW doesn't do that. NSW seems to have the opinion that every school is an individual place, and we all have a very different data set when it comes to our students. So NSW tends not to get too heavily involved in that. It would be nice if NSW produced a teaching program for every topic. Never have done, but DOE recently said that they're going to publish a teaching program for everybody in their schools. That will be interesting. But part of the reaction to that was, well, how difficult would it be to write a teaching program for every year 7 student in New South Wales, because there's such a massive variety. Did I answer the question?
I think so. We'll see what Jane comes back with. There's a question here from Sumi. Hi, Stuart. This new syllabus seems like the idea is that we are to make individualized learning paths for each student. How do we teach? Make individual learning programs through a school online learning management system? Well, my initial comment to that is it's certainly a toned down, that the emphasis on individualized learning is certainly toned down in this draft compared to what came about in Jeff Masters' review and some of his recommendations and some of the earlier responses from the New South Wales government. But that seems to have been toned down a little bit. We'll wait and see how that is talked about in the final version. But you know what, I'll just, before you jump in, Stuart, we will be making some resources available alongside the next edition that will allow very detailed feedback to be gleaned about individualized student performance, that will help teachers make decisions about classroom or group teaching, however they think is best. So we won't be pushing a system that puts students on their own individualized pathway and tells the teacher exactly what they should be teaching individualized students, because that is an unreasonable and impractical thing for us to do, and it just doesn't work in the classroom based on our experience. But we will certainly be providing individualized feedback and data that will allow teachers to group students in certain ways, see patterns, alongside the teaching of the textbooks and so on, according to the courses that they've already planned. Something that will fit alongside their current teaching, but just make them able to make more informed decisions about their teaching. Stuart.
The those of you who have used the books would be aware that the exercises are very long and comprehensive, but at the start of within every exercise, there are 3 different sets of questions of different levels of difficulty. I had the pleasure of working at Inner Sydney High School, watching teachers use my books, and then encouraging students to make sensible choices of their own about which set of questions was right for them. And I've watched teachers having conversations with students, and even in report comments saying that they should be choosing the harder set of questions more often rather than just playing it safe. And sometimes the students who played it safe, finished quickly, could then try the harder things. So, look, I think the one thing I really like about our exercises is that broad range of degree of difficulty, and that's something that we plan to continue. Absolutely, definitely.
Yep.
Great. We've got another one here from Carolyn Chester. At the moment, we have to have common assessments for NSW tasks in Year 10. Would these need to be only on the core topics? What do you think?
Well, I don't think that is a NSW thing. Okay. I'd be happy to be proved wrong. As far as I know, every student in Year 10 at your school can do a different assessment task. I'm not saying that's a good idea, don't get me wrong, but I don't think any commonality is required.
Good.
I'd be happy to be proved wrong, and I will apologise publicly if I'm wrong. At my last school as head teacher, every time there was a task, there was a common section that everybody did. But I don't think we had to do that.
Okay. Scott, the next one you might be able to answer directly from Kingsley. Cambridge, is it your plan to produce a single Year 9 textbook covering all core and paths, similarly for Year 10?
So our plan is to keep roughly a similar structure as we currently have. I mean, we have, it's interesting because we have 2 series essentially that make us end up with 3 books currently for Years 9 and 10. We have the Year 9 and 10 Gold, which sits at the lowest. It's sort of a stage 4/5.1 books from 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then we have the stage 5.1 and 2 for Year 9 and 10. Then we have, as Stuart was talking about, stage 1.2 and 3 for Years 9 and 10. So what our current plan is for Years 9 and 10 is to make sure we have our plan is to have 2 books each, as we currently do in the main series, and that the lower level book includes all of the core topics, as well as the standard, the paths that are labeled as standard. We'll wait and see how that's exactly dealt with in the final version of the syllabus, as well as a smattering of topics that will allow students flexibility, and teachers, for students who have started with that book, but then may change in Year 10 or otherwise, so that they aren't disadvantaged if they, for whatever reason, want to take on advanced in Year 11. We don't want students to be in a situation where they're dictated a set of topics in one book and then they make a decision that they want to try and do, they want to step up a bit, which we should be encouraging, and then find that they haven't done any of the suitable prerequisite material. So that's our current plan. Anything you want to add to that, Stuart?
No, that's good.
Good. I'll go to the next one. Carolyn Chester again. Will there be a stage 6 subject below standard that those who do core topics in stage 5 can cope with?
Well, they've written the stage 6 numeracy subject. And I imagine that being so new, that they will continue to offer that as stage 6. Above that, I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
No.
But I would be very surprised if they dump that stage 6 numeracy course, having spent millions of dollars on it. Big question mark is, do they make maths compulsory in stage 6? That may depend on the outcome of the state election in March.
Interesting. Kim, we've got some more questions, I think.
Yep, we sure do.
There's quite a lot. Okay, so I'll just say that if we don't we'll try and get through everything. But if we don't, we will have a copy, Stuart, Kim, myself, we'll have a copy of all of these questions, and we will get back to people individually or somehow, so that no one misses out on a response.
We do receive emails of everybody, so we can get back to everyone directly, and we certainly will do that if we don't get to your question. So, yeah. There's just a couple of comments there that I'm going to move past and move straight to. Hi, Stuart. We're running a high performance class, but they're put off because they're not assessed on the additional work. How do we manage this? This is from Anna Tate.
Yes, we at my last school, we had that issue. We addressed it by those high performing kids. They could be given topic tests by their teacher immediately, as soon as the topic was finished, whether it was whatever topic it was, the teacher was free to implement a topic test immediately. But also when it came time to end of year exams, as I said, there was a section that everybody did. And there was a section for those students. And in that section, they were assessed on all of the high-level topics they had done. Almost all of them.
Now we've got one here from Stuart Lord. Is there any confirmations of maths numeracy being compulsory in the future?
As I said, I think it will be. Look, I'm not into predicting election results. But the idea of making maths compulsory, that was a thought bubble from from the former Premier. And she was shouted down by her own party, as far as I know. And the result of that was stage 6 numeracy. If our government changes, they might follow through with the promise to make maths compulsory. Or not, who knows?
There's a good question here from Joe Anderson. Will the implementation be staggered? And what will this year's 8 study in 2024 and year 10?
Yep, we don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
The current government has put down their timeline and it said 7 to 10. 7 to 10 in 2024, followed by brand new year 11 in 2025. 4 months out from the election, they might not want to back away from that. But maybe that will change after the election. Politics and education, hey?
They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Tanya, I would like to say here that we won't respond to price points here in the webinar. This is something that I can get one of your local reps to give you an email or communicate with you directly regarding, so that we can talk about the textbooks in that way. It's better to be personal in those conversations. So we'll move on to David. For strugglers in stage 4 and 5, are they only required to complete stage 4 core and skip stage 5 core, or if they plan to do year 11 numeracy? Sorry.
I think it says they're supposed to do stage 4 core and stage 5 core. That's going to be a hefty step up for some kids compared to previous years. But there's also life skills, but I've never really gone down that pathway with any of my students. But there's that is going to remain an option as well.
There's just quickly, Kim, there's a question from Anna Tate about what about the COVID skills deficit?
Sorry.
As a resource provider, there is limited, there are limitations to what we can do about that. Our role is to assist with that, obviously. I think this goes hand in hand with the mention earlier about a diagnostics tool that we are working on currently amongst the suite of resources that we'll be providing with the next editions. I think that will be a useful tool to assist teachers to find the gaps, especially students, in year 7 and onwards. That's certainly probably the most useful thing we'll be doing to assist with that.
Great. Just responding to Susan Hauser, yes, this webinar is being recorded. You'll receive that in an email within the next couple of days.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan. I met you a few months ago.
Yes, southwestern Sydney.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fabulous. Michael Palm, we have 5.3. Yes, you know everyone, don't you, Stuart?
It's pretty old. Look at the colour of the
hair. We have our 5.3 students complete both their 5.3 exam as well as the 5.2 exam. Yep. They do really well in the 5.2 average course, and it looks great in their reports.
Yep. And at my last school, I should have mentioned at my last school, I major fight with the person in charge of reports. Both of those marks, the common section and the other section, they both appeared on the report, not just a conglomerate, because some students did really well in one and not so well in the other. Some students did better in the harder one than the easier one, because the hard stuff was more recent, topics they had just finished, fresh in their mind. Anyway, yeah, that was a fight. Oh, you can't have 2 marks on the report. Yes, I can.
This one here from Jenny Westerbrink. Hi, Stuart and Scott. If you are looking to produce 2 different leveled books, as you were discussing, would the mostly core book include different, more accessible practice exercises than the core and path book, which I guess is aimed at a higher level, yep. Or would it just have less content?
I think the former, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like our current year 9 5.1, 5.2 book. When you compare the 5.1, 5.2 book with the 5.2, 5.3 book, this one, the exercise starts easier and finishes easier. They sit like this. There is some overlap, but I did try to be sure that there were some easier questions in the easier book.
That's right, and the leveling of questions, the harder pathway in the 5.1 and 2 book, it, as Stuart was saying, that ends. That there is some crossover, but the harder questions in the 5.1, 2, 3 go far beyond that. There's also a greater amount of revision in the lower level book, and that's another thing we'll be focusing on. Our plan is to be very careful in the labeling of content. We've tried to do that historically in the first edition, the second edition of our New South Wales books, and it will likely be even more important that we are really careful about how we label the content to assist with course planning. If something is revision content, for example, it will be really, there'll be a greater need to know that so that people who don't need that content don't waste time on it, but people who need that can factor that in their course planning, along with Stuart's pretty comprehensive teaching programs that he'll be providing again.
From Louise Ware, are there many changes to the current content? Are there any topics gone?
Okay, that's what I've got in the remaining slides. Do I quickly fly through my remaining?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll come back to the last.
Yeah. Okay.
Couple of
so there's a couple of curious things I discovered in the current. And be aware that this could change in the final thing. This one is bizarre. LCM HCF. Good old friends. I did them in primary school. You did them in primary school. Yep. They were in stage 3. Well, the new one, chirp, chirp, chirp. Nothing in stage 3. Stage 4, HCF. Stage LCM, nowhere. Bizarre. So there's, I can't envisage leaving that out of the book. Yeah, there is some change to the way times tables. I know we're all very passionate. It would be awesome if Year 7 came to us knowing their times tables. Well, there has been a little bit of a step up in the K-6 syllabus in stage 2 about times tables being, well, they don't use the word memorized, but yeah.
Incidentally, Stuart, do you have slides?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. I forgot to share my screen. I've got a really bad habit of that. There we go. What happened then? Yeah, okay, going back. Yes, the description of know and recall your times tables has been stepped up. Will it make any difference? Remains to be seen. Division with a remainder, it still falls to us to express the remainder as a fraction. I don't know why they do that, but yeah, be aware of that. That is still going to be a thing. This is a big winner. Statistics, I got 2 big winners and 2 big losers. Statistics is a big winner because we have this path topic, where students can conduct their own statistical inquiry. And I've never seen the word hypothesis in a New South Wales maths syllabus before. I'm thinking, you know what, if you did this topic really well in year 9 and 10, then the investigative style assignment in year 11 standard is a doddle. They are ready on day 1 of year 11 to do the investigative style assignment. Likewise, year 12 advanced. If you've done this well in year 9 and 10, they are ready for the investigative style assignment in year 12 advanced, because they can collect 2 data sets and compare, you know, before and after or whatever. The other big winner is networks. We've already discussed it. It's nowhere near as big as what's in year 12 standard 2. It is a smaller version of networks, much smaller. Doesn't do all the critical path analysis and all of that. The big losers are Euclidean geometry. We're calling it space. Not a fan of that. Anyway, something had to go. And it probably is the most sensible choice that some of the really formal Euclidean geometry is moving from stage 4 into stage 5, and most likely be done by students on a pathway to advanced, which is probably where it belongs. Yeah. And the other loser is mass, time, computer memory. Yep. Time zones. We had a whole year 7, chapter 7, beautiful chapter we wrote from scratch. I'm not sure if anybody will do it anymore. Not sure if it'll be in the book. That's a topic of discussion. Yeah. Working out computer storage on your computer, that seems to have vanished at this point. What else have we got? Yep, that's it. Stop the share. Right, more questions?
Yeah, so we've got about 5 minutes left before we close down. So perhaps we'll try to fit 1 or 2 more questions in. One here from Scotty O'Brien: to keep students on their appropriate track brings the challenge of having all classes on the same line in the timetable. Is this movement between classes something you believe would be necessary?
At Inner Sydney High School, that was not possible to put all of the first year 9 on the same line of the timetable. We had a lot of conversations and managed to get 4 classes on one line, 3 classes on another line, and there was an express class on both lines. There were 2 AAA classes on both lines, and all the numerate citizens had to be doing maths on a particular line. That was all figured out in advance. The only problem would be if somebody went to numerate citizen during year 9, they might have to change lines. So far, Ash indicated that everything is going okay so far with regard to that. So yes, whatever you can do by hook or by crook, whether all the maths is on one line or on 2 lines, you know, do what you can. Fight. You need to have a very public, the whole thing, that the whole presentation to year 8 parents was a very public thing. And doing it in the middle of the choose your electives season was also quite a good idea, I think.
We might have time to fit 1 more.
Can I just throw, I wonder if Ash, if you're still there, do you want to say something in it? The Q&A doesn't have to be a Q. You could just throw in an additional piece of information. If you're still there, Ash. He was there earlier because he sent me a text message saying, oh, because of www. Come in, Ash, if you're there. If not.
Nothing yet. Nothing yet.
Okay, we got another question?
Yes, we've got 1 more here that, where are we? From Shakir Ahmed. If those are the big differences between the old and new syllabi, it doesn't seem like much is changing apart from the labelling. Would you agree?
Yes, the actual mathematical content, not much that's gone. There is a bit of movement from stage 4 to stage 5, a little bit from stage 4 to stage 3, a little bit from stage 3 to stage 4. Look, there's a lot of nitty-gritty things I did not put in my slides, too much information at this point, plus it's not final. Trust me, when we get that final version, it'll be fine-tooth comb time. But yeah, it is the labelling. And I think the labelling is good because I just thought that when we went from advanced intermediate standard to 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, I just think that was the wrong choice. And now we're kind of correcting that by having only 2 things. There's the core and the options, which are now called parts. Don't know why, but I liked part options. But anyway, wasn't my decision. Yeah, did I answer that question?
Yep, you definitely did.
Got another one?
No, I think that we'll actually need to close it there so that everyone stays on schedule. But let me just tell everybody that you will be receiving a link after you log out of the webinar so that you can give any feedback on the webinar. Please take the time to respond. These are really important feedback options for us to learn from. You know, we want to keep being able to supply these webinars and do a good job of it. So any information that you can give, any feedback is great for us. Know also that all the attendees are eligible to enter the draw to win a Google Nest Hub Max valued at $349. You'll also be notified by email within the next few days. But for everybody here, please join me in thanking Stuart for his time, and of course, Scott as well, for your expertise. And thanks to everyone for joining us this evening.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Ash sent me a text. This for the next cohort of Year 9, he was able to get them all on one line. That would have been something of a fight, I would imagine. But in the previous one, that line was split. Those two lines were split between maths and English. So on one of those lines, there would have been 4 classes of maths and possibly 3 classes of English. And on the other line, the reverse. Yeah. So if somebody changed from, if somebody had to change lines, they would have had to change their English class as well. Yeah, but I don't think that's happened.
Yeah.
Can I just add to Stuart's comments before you wrap things up, Kim? Apart from thanking everyone for coming along late on a Wednesday, we really appreciate your attendance. This is the time that you know, Stuart and I are working closely to put together the new books. We are doing that based on 2 sources of information. One is, of course, NASA and the information that's in the syllabus, but the other, possibly more important source of information is teachers and people like you. What you have heard here might get you thinking about how this is going to affect you into when it does become time to implement the new syllabus. But what needs to happen is based on what is pragmatic and what is practical and what makes sense in the classroom. And that is what we're going to be focusing on. So feedback along those lines, requests about what you would like to see. There were some comments in there that we didn't get to, as well, about how we structure things in stage 5 in particular. Certainly get in touch either via your rep or via Stuart, via myself. And we'll factor all of those in as we're building our new resources.
Come over in the holidays. I'll be here every day in the summer break. I'll be here every day. You're welcome to pop over. I'll pop out and get some buns for lunch, some fresh buns, and you can do some answers for me to make sure the answers are right.
Thank you so much, Stuart, and thanks, Scott, and good evening to everyone here. Thank you so much for attending.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye for now.